All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to a very special explainer where we're going to take a really moody, poetic, and beautifully observed journey through a modern electric Paris. We're following in the footsteps of a woman who arrives in the city with, well, one bag too few and a mustard-colored notebook. She's essentially seeking her true coordinates in the world. And it's this fascinating exploration of how we watch the city, and maybe more importantly, how the city watches us right back.
To really get a handle on her journey, we have to start here with Charles Baudelaire. He wrote this famous line, "Modernity is the transient, the fleeting, the contingent." Baudelaire used to walk Paris back in the 19th century, totally obsessed with the fleeting beauty of the crowd, which kind of forces us to ask, how does that transient beauty actually feel today? How do we capture those fleeting moments in our own crowded electric streets? Because that is exactly what our protagonist sets out to discover.
So, Section 1, The Modern Flâneuse, Walking and Watching.
Our protagonist arrives in Paris basically fleeing a version of herself she just no longer recognizes. She takes a single room, grabs that mustard notebook, and begins to walk. She's adopting the role of a flâneuse. And honestly, the 19th century didn't really have room for this word. Back then, women walking alone were seen as part of the spectacle, part of the danger, or part of the commerce, right? They were meant to be looked at. But our protagonist flips the script. She becomes a female observer, holding the gaze. And that act demands this really specific, controlled audacity. She actually practices a radical neutrality on her face, just so she can watch absolutely everything without becoming part of the spectacle herself.
Moving on to Section 2, The Electric Sublime, Shadow versus Exposure.
It's crazy to think about, but the physical infrastructure of a city actually changes our emotional experience of it. Paris has obviously changed since Baudelaire's time, and the lighting is the absolute key here. Baudelaire walked under gas lamps. Those offered romantic strangeness, shadows, and this kind of softening mercy to the faces in the crowd. But our flâneuse? She walks under modern electric light. An electric light doesn't bloom, it just arrives. It has this democratic severity. It doesn't soften the exhaustion of the woman working the brasserie counter at midnight, it fully exposes it. And surprisingly, our protagonist finds this brutal honesty even more fascinating than those old romantic shadows.
Which brings us to this concept of spleen. When people ask her why she writes such sad things, she explains it's actually not sadness, it's precision. Spleen isn't depression, it's a permanent, slight fever of impermanence. I just love that phrasing. It's the condition of being acutely alive to beauty while simultaneously knowing that the beauty, the perfect light on the Seine or a fascinating stranger, is already leaving. It's a hyper-aware mode of attention that fuels her entire notebook.
All right, Section 3, Figures in the Crowd, Accidental Poetry. Armed with this incredible hyper-attention, she moves through the streets, reading the weather and the people as if they're one single emotional landscape. First off, she categorizes the rain. We have 7 distinct types of Parisian rain here. There's the brief apology rain, the socializing conversation rain, the totally apocalyptic biblical rain, all the way down to the night rain, which is that ancient sound of water falling on stone that makes her feel connected to centuries past. It really grounds us deeply in the sensory, wet reality of her walks and shows how weather forces strangers into these accidental doorway democracies.
Then there are the everyday figures she meets. Take the retired postman over at the Place de la République. After 31 years of delivering mail and experiencing what he calls a high density of days, his life just got quiet. So what did he do? He started naming the pigeons. He named a super aggressive one Haussmann because he demolishes things, and a really nervous one Baudelaire. He found genuine meaning in their quiet lives, which is such a beautiful reminder that surprise doesn't really ask for qualifications.
We also get a glimpse into the hidden economies of the city at night. Take Fatima, a midnight flower seller with a little battery-lit cart. When asked exactly how long she's been selling flowers, Fatima replies, 30 years, give or take a flower. Our flâneuse immediately writes this down, recognizing it as probably the most beautiful, precise unit of temporal measurement she has ever heard in her life.
Or picture this. On a crowded rush-hour metro, she observes a teenage girl with a battered violin case on her back. The girl has headphones in, and her fingers are silently fingering the notes right there on her coat. She's literally practicing without the instrument. The music exists entirely in that space between her moving fingers and the case on her back. It's just a profound moment of private discipline hiding right out in the open.
Section 4, The City as Mirror,
A pedagogy of reflection.
So, after about 6 weeks of all this walking, the relationship entirely inverts. The city stops being just a spectacle and actually begins to reflect her own internal state. It starts teaching her profound lessons. The boulevard, for instance, goes nowhere, yet somehow contains absolutely everything. Shop windows? They aren't just displays. They're essentially mirrors showing you what you feel you lack. She learns that beauty must be received at a peripheral angle, because if you stare directly at it, it just vanishes into the ordinary. And most profoundly, she realizes the city's greatest gift is its utter indifference. It literally doesn't remember yesterday's version of you. It grants you the ultimate freedom to reinvent. Then, while walking in the hilly 20th arrondissement, she spots the sentence painted on a wall. What you are looking for is also looking for you. She stares at it for a long time. It hits her that she's been writing this exact sentence in different forms since September. The city literally rhymes with her internal journey. It's actively showing her what she needs to see to heal. She even sees this reflected in the lit windows she passes at night. Think of each window as a private theater frame. You see a man joyfully cooking alone, proving you can have a private sufficiency that needs absolutely nothing from the street below, a child resisting sleep, or even just a pair of feet in socks bathed in the blue light of a screen. She realizes that the city isn't only its breathtaking sublimity, the city is also the ordinary socks.
Okay, section 5, Finding Claire, the second walk.
This all brings us to a really profound self-discovery. The crucial question we have to ask is, what was she actually running from in the first place? She clarifies it wasn't a man or a bad relationship she was running from. No, she was running from a version of herself. She had spent a decade building this accommodated, institutional self, literally trimming her own needs to fit the available space, turning down her own intensity so she wouldn't overwhelm the room. She came to Paris to essentially walk herself back into her true self. And after 7 weeks and miles upon miles of walking, she finally names herself. She claims the name Claire. It's a variation of her formidable grandmother's name, and it literally means clarity. It represents a total refusal of soft, blurry sentimentality. She writes it right there in her notebook, realizing, this is who I am. She was here the whole time. She was walking. Standing by the Seine in the cold December light, she has this incredible revelation about continuity. You see, the river is never the exact same water from moment to moment, yet it continues. Continuity is not sameness. She left her old life, an old relationship, and all her old certainties totally behind. But she continues. Her reinvention, her changing, is literally her continuation. Now, throughout all her walks, she had been spotting this man in a wine-colored coat. He was always reading and writing while walking. To her, he was the symbol of the fleeting, untouchable city. In fact, she made a rule to never talk to him, just to preserve the mystery. But one morning, in her small local cafe, she breaks her own rule. They speak. Turns out, he's a translator who also writes his own necessary thoughts in a blue notebook. The sublimity, she realizes, wasn't in keeping him at a distance as a mystery. It was in connecting with someone who shares that same deep, observant absorption in the world. Ultimately, she catalogs exactly what the city has kept for her. While she lost her old institutional self and all those old certainties, the city preserved her absolute core. It gave her back the quality of noticing. It returned her first authentic language. It taught her how to experience deep solitude without actually being lonely. And most importantly, it kept the writing alive in that mustard-colored notebook. Which brings us to the end of our journey, and I really want to turn the mirror onto you. We've seen how the streets, the rain, and the crowds completely reflected Claire back to herself. So I have to ask you, when you walk out your front door and pay close attention to the fleeting, electric world around you, what is your city keeping for you? Think about it on your next walk. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you next time.